All right. Well, welcome to the Viking Press Pass. I'm Matthew Nickel, and joining me today from the baseball team, the first from the baseball team, fifth year senior, Addison Southwick. So, Addison, thanks for connecting with me tonight.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, I figured, we were supposed to call the Lutheran game tonight, and I saw the weather last night. I was talking to Trevor Jassart, and we kept going back and forth, like, are we going to do it? Are we not? Hey, let's commit to it. I can make it happen on our end, but then obviously the weather didn't cooperate. So here we are making lemons, maybe a lemon hot toddy out of lemonades. I don't know. So we'll figure something out here. Well, cool, man. Well, hey, let's talk a little bit about the return. So you're at fifth year. Let's kick things off there and talk a bit about, what motivated you to come back for a fifth year this year.
Yeah, of course. So, you know, didn't necessarily know last year at the beginning if I wanted a fifth year or not coming back from an elbow surgery. And, everyone kind of made their plans pretty early, I felt like. And it was one of those things that was brought up to me probably my freshman year by Coach Howard, where he had mentioned it like middle of the game, like, hey, the NCAA just kind of gave that blanket waiver if, it's something you'd be interested in. So the thought was always kind of there. I just wanted to make sure, I felt right, doing it. Felt like I still had more to give. And ultimately, probably around last February, I decided, felt good throwing again. So I wanted to get a whole year of baseball under my belt before, I finally hung up the cleats. And, I'm super happy I decided to come back.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's one of those things. I mean, once you step off the mountain for good, that's it. So, so it's hard to step away. We obviously love to see you back on the mound here again for a fifth year. I mean, I'll say selfishly, I'm excited to see you back on the mound here again here this year, trying for, I guess that could be what your technically. I mean, it'd be what your third CCIW conference championship, right? You'd be going for this year.
Yeah, so we won it in 2020 when I was a sophomore, 2023 when I was a junior, and then hopefully we can pull it off again this year, and that would make it three. So that would be pretty special.
Yeah, I mean, it was just what a runaway last year in Milliken, away from doing it last year. So well, I mean, the Vikings are sitting at 2-3. It's early in the season here. How would you just assess kind of where the team is at, and just how the team is kind of playing, here early on?
I feel like definitely 2 and 3 wasn't the way anybody pictured us starting out. Coming back, having I think it's 8 fifth years, a number of seniors. We all kind of pictured ourselves, hopefully starting off strong and continuing that throughout the regular season. But ultimately, like I said, 2 and 3 wasn't the way we pictured ourselves starting out. But I feel like there's definitely been a good, I guess, base that we could build off of. And after our loss to Loris on Sunday, the coaches kind of, gave it to us straight. They pretty much said it's the team that's going to come to practice on Monday is, what's going to decide the season. If we're going to come in, be ready to put in work, we can easily steer this the right way, take it to where we need it to be. Or, if we're don't necessarily want to do this, but if we kind of come back and say, we're good with where we're at, we're hoping it isn't that way. I don't think it is, but we'd probably be 27-17 again, which, ultimately last year wasn't the way we wanted it to be, but right, I feel like there's places we could grow off of. So,
Well, I mean, worst case scenario, right? Win the CCIW tournament. That's always the last ditch effort. But again, it's I mean, it's early in the season, right? You started off against Rhodes, a top ranked team. Things started off, pretty good. I know, Kuhn got around. But again, it's, you just kind of, loss, win, loss, win, loss. But you got a lot of new faces, obviously within the team here as well. And I've seen a few folks kind of move around, not only just um, the batting order here, but just even, kind of within the field of play, there's been, kind of a few adjustments here just throughout the year. And again, you're just, kind of plugging some new, freshmen into some of those different gaps. And kind of figuring out how to play, play with each other again. And, um, but, switching to you a little bit, I mean, what's it been like? How do you feel like it's been going on the mound for you so far? Just, in the first couple of appearances, I know you've kind of closed out, a couple of games here.
Yeah, kind of bittersweet, I guess, is how I'd describe it. Rhodes, I felt like kind of just let that one snowball. Boy, felt like it was one bad pitch, and that kind of changed the course of the game. And I felt like against Loris, I finally kind of calmed myself down, got back on the right foot, and ultimately, I feel like not truly the start I wanted to have, especially fifth year, last year of baseball, but right, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done on my behalf, but I'd say definitely could be a lot worse, could be a lot better. So can't complain so far. Just ultimately right now, just trying to keep myself kind of in check, do what I need to do, and hopefully help us win baseball games as a team.
I mean, like, what's the hardest part of pitching, early in the season? Um, the team's moving around a lot. I mean, we're dealing with like what we had today, right? I mean, a lot of weather, fluctuations in temperature. Is it really about, finding the velocity? Is it finding the control? Is it really, kind of the cold weather and just managing, keeping your arm warm? Like, what are some of the things that you work through just as a pitcher on the mound kind of early in the season?
I feel like early on, I've kind of never really found it too hard to get warm, especially, you get the adrenaline going, and we're usually moving around in the bullpen a while before we have to start throwing. I feel like the thing with me early on, it's more or less just kind of finding in like that control, kind of dialing myself back and really taking it one pitch at a time. And for the most part, I mean, you have your pitches regardless of the time of year that kind of get away from you, but it's all about, building off of it and trying to find, strength where you can. And with the cold, you kind of look at it, both teams are kind of dealing with it. So you can't really
Mm.
make that excuse too much.
I mean, that's got to be tough, though. I mean, playing when it's like 42 degrees, 35 degrees. uh, that's got to be a little tough,
Yeah.
though, right?
I mean, this last weekend it was pretty cold and windy, and decided to shave my face Saturday night in Champaign at the hotel. So came back on the bus Sunday, and I was all windburnt, and that didn't feel too good for a little bit. But I mean, you got to do what you got to do to change the mojo and kind of get yourself where you need to be.
I was gonna say, I was like, I was digging the stash, and I just noticed you hopped on here, and there's no stash. So what's the story behind the no mustache Addison here? I mean, we're going back to
Uh,
like 2022.
yeah, I was about to say I was talking with a couple of my teammates past few days, and I think the last time I did not have a mustache was like winter break of my junior year. So it's been a bit, but like I said, I was kind of struggling my first two appearances, and after the game against Boy, I kind of just said, you know what, need to change it up. Went clean shaven, didn't tell anybody I was really doing it. Just kind of hopped in the shower, shaved right after, and now I'm here. And definitely heard it from a couple teammates how I look like a baby face. But it's might be all just mind stuff, but it definitely I feel like it kind of helped me get on the right foot against Loris, so I can't complain too much.
Absolutely, man. Um, Now let's talk a little bit about, the pitching rotation here. I see, like Zach DeMarley's got a couple of starts. So does Ethan McGraw. Chance Crothers has one. Adam Bendo, he's come in for some middle relief for, roughly 3 innings kind of per outing. Melby's got one. Blake Nettleton's a new name there, for the Vikings, kind of in the middle innings there. Then it's been kind of a rotation of you and Cam, and Brian Fisher kind of closing out games. Coming into your fifth year, is there a role like you want to play or, kind of moving into sort of a role this year that, whether you want to be like an everyday type use pitcher or do you want to be more of a closer? I know we were kind of chatting a little bit about that at the basketball game, but as you think about kind of this year, early in the season, what are your kind of thoughts on like what role you think you'll play kind of within this rotation a little bit?
Ultimately, that's one of those questions never really get answered. Kind of being a bullpen guy throughout my career here, but I kind of talked with the coaches. I just more or less want as many appearances as I can get, and as many appearances as I ultimately earn. So I told them it doesn't matter if it's long relief, short relief, closing games. I even told them if they really need it, I'll start a game for them. So, well, I'm open to doing whatever. I just kind of want the ball as many times as I can before I hang up the cleats.
Absolutely. Well, we definitely need, a couple of those guys that can come in sometimes on short rest, especially as we go into like the CCIW tournament. Those become, pretty important games as well. Um, is there a few names we can expect to see kind of on the mound this year that maybe we should be keeping an eye on?
Yeah, of course. Ultimately, I feel like top to bottom, our staff is one of the best in the CCIW, if not the best. And, I feel like, we look at guys like Cam Miller, feel like he's got that mindset to him. He can throw every day. Brian Fisher, I feel like he's really stepped up kind of at that back end. Ethan McGraw, right, coming in as a freshman, he's definitely kind of shown some bits and pieces here. DeMarley, Carruthers, right, a lot of big returners from last year. So definitely have a lot of hope for the entire staff. Don't want to just single out like one guy here. So
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's good to have just I mean, obviously, notice, having you, having Zach, having Chance, having Bendo, having Cam, those are, Fisher obviously as well. A lot of those, names are guys that, we've relied on, especially last year, and ultimately would rely on coming into this year. But it's good to see, a number of folks continue to kind of step up and obviously like last year was a, a name like Fuller, right? Zach Fuller stepped up, but now he's over at Blackhawk. So he was kind of a one and done, with the program and had some um, other choices he wanted to go make. Um, as I was thinking and looking at some of the other like fresh faces, even just in the batting lineup, like Ryan Kuhn, Caleb Hackman, Riley Hendren, August Bessemer. Those have been some freshman names that have popped up, and it seems like there's been, you know, a pretty strong, incoming kind of freshman class. I mean, how's the freshman class been, gelling, with the team so far?
I feel like our freshman class is pretty much next to none. I'd like to say they've been in the lineup more, and they've definitely he played better, than my opinion, than a lot of other freshmen we've seen at the 5 other schools we've played. And ultimately, they're a hardworking group of guys, and definitely love to have them around. And we're always talking like as an upperclassman group about leave the jersey in a better spot than what we found it. And coming back, being a fifth year, and being able to bond with those guys and hopefully rub off on them a little bit, teach them like the Augie way has always been. It's been kind of nice, and I definitely feel like after this year, they're definitely gonna carry the program to some hopefully bigger and better places.
Yeah, absolutely. So you were chatting a little bit about tonight. I mean, we were supposed to have a game against Luther, and man, I was all set. I pulled into the parking lot, and Trevor Jassard, our sports information director, shot me a text and said, "Hey, game is postponed." So I was pretty bummed, but so you guys had to go out, kind of, you know, get the field. What do you have to take? You said you had to take what, the tarp off,
Yeah, we had to do
working
a
in the
post
rain a little
practice
bit.
start pull. We had to pull it off the field because of the winds tomorrow morning. So it's definitely wasn't what we expected to have to do after practice today, but it's one of those things you kind of embrace the suck, for lack of better terms. It's no one wants to get wet, no one wants to be in the cold, but it's definitely one of those things. It's I'm not thinking about it now, but here in a year, maybe 2 years, I might be messing around in the cold with all the fellas pulling off the tarp. So
Yeah. So I mean, when something like that happens, it's like today's like a good example. A game is canceled. They know kind of early in the day. What does the program do? Typically for that day, do you guys try to get some type of like simulated activity in? What does the team, typically do?
So it obviously kind of depends on the time of the year right now, right? Like it's obviously too cold and it was raining all day for us to really go outside and do anything. But when stuff like this happens, we try to pitchers who haven't thrown off a mound in a while to hitters will usually get some sort of like simulated at bats and indoors, depending on where you're at in your week. Like a bunch of guys that threw this weekend were kind of trying to get a recovery day in. So a lot of guys played catch. We did some defensive work, went upstairs. A lot of the hitters, it was a lot of BP focus, that type of thing. Do what we can do in the cage and just try to make sure we're ready for when we get down in Florida.
Yeah, well, you're off to warmer climates here in about 48 hours, so
Yeah.
that'll certainly that'll be nice. Um, shifting topics a little bit, so I was thinking a little bit about, some of your prior years coming in as a fifth year. I mean, I look at like 2022, God, that was a special year for you, obviously. The best strikeouts per game rate in the history of Augustana. I mean, that was like literally just shy of 14 strikeouts per 9 innings. Um, and and gosh, I mean that like team and that like little stretch was littered with like obviously Harry, Josh Wintrub. They had some pretty strong years there as well. But you talk about coming back for a fifth year, some of the motivation. And when I think about this team, the amount of seniors, like, what are maybe some of the team or, maybe even some of like your individual goals, like you really want to set out to accomplish, outside of, hey, we want to make the tournament. We want to, we want to win the CCIW, tournament. Like, what are some of the other goals that either the team has set out, that you're trying to do? Like, great example, the basketball team this year said we wanted to host a playoff game. What are some of the goals maybe the team or maybe even yourself, have kind of set out for this year?
It's a good question. So I don't think we've necessarily like truly sat down and talked like as an upperclassmen group of like what big goals we'd like to set it. But I feel like one of those big things we always talk about is, hosting in conference, hosting a regional, right? Host a playoff game first. And then, right, obviously going 39-9, we'd love to break that 40-win mark for once, like to win more games than any other Augie team in history. Those would be pretty special. And we've talked about that stuff. And then every day kind of showing up to practice on our practice plan. It's printed off every day. It says CCIW champs, regional champs, super regional champs, national champs. And I feel like those have been, the big goals, obviously, for any team. But, saying that every day is kind of like the talking point or the focal point of, hey, we might not all be exactly how good or living up to our own expectations, but as long as we're doing our part to get ourselves there, that would be a good day. So
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, with the amount of senior leadership coming back, I feel like, you've been definitely a part of a class and of, just super talented folks that are across this lineup. We talked about Moselle, Green, McGinnis, Kanelakis, Aragon, Biggins, Davis, and I know I'm missing some, certainly on that list, but you guys have really, had not only a great run and a great career, within the CCIW, within Division III, here at Augustana, but I think you've continued to show, the sophomores and the juniors, below you around what it means to play high level baseball, play winning culture baseball, do the right things, but also just be great people, at the end of the day
yeah,
as well. So, so all things aside, I think you guys are doing a pretty damn bang up job. So, if I say so myself. So,
yeah,
now, like over the course of a career, though, I'm going to go back a little bit because I'm going to prop you up a little bit, right? It's like, you had the best strikeout per game rate, right behind Harry and Josh. So third kind of all time there. and I think about, what does it take over the course of a collegiate career to maintain just a high level of consistency, over that time? Like, what are some of the kind of the tips and tricks to do some of that stuff?
I think the biggest thing for me has really just been kind of focusing on the basics. I mean, can't do anything without my fastball, and kind of relying on that and working on that every day, and then working off of that and catch play every day, right? Just trying to make sure that I'm able to do my job and throw strikes as efficiently as possible. I think that's been like the big thing. And it's a 10 to 15-minute block during practice every day, but it's probably one of the things as a pitcher you take like the most pride in, and I put the most thought into. And it's one of those things that it's obviously paid off for me. And it's one of the things I'm trying to hopefully pass down to the younger pitchers is, it might not seem like a lot. You're just playing catch, but at the end of the day, there's always something you could work on during that little bit of time. So
Now, the other thing I was thinking about as you were talking about that, um, is whether it's throughout the game, Coach Wallace is maybe, changing some of our infielding lineup, maybe who's behind the plate, making a number of switches, whether it's to a doubleheader, whatever the case is. You'll throw, to Simon, you'll throw to Aragon. You maybe throw now to, the freshman, August Bessemer. Is that how you say your last name? Bessemer?
I believe
Um,
so. I'm not
um,
exactly too sure,
I need to validate
but
some of the incoming names. But we're gonna go with August Bessemer. Um, as a pitcher, I've always been a little curious, like, does it matter or does it change a little bit on how you pitch based on the catcher at all, or does it necessarily, it doesn't quite, is there a different like catching style that maybe, you know, as a pitcher kind of reflects on you a little bit and how you pitch? Anything like that that ever pops up? I don't know. I've never been a pitcher, so I couldn't tell you.
uh, I feel like it kind of depends on the pitcher. I mean, one of the big focuses I have just about every year is throwing to every catcher as frequently as possible, making sure all of us are kind of on the same page. And I know that the coaches do a good job of cycling catchers in and out, catching bullpens and that stuff. So I wouldn't say necessarily like the catching style affects how we throw, but it definitely helps that we're always on the same page, or at least working toward it. They know where my misses are, and they know how my stuff moves versus somebody else on the staff. So it's kind of just that familiarity with each other helps a lot.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It was just something that kind of popped in my mind a little bit, and because I was listening to the D3 baseball pod. They're on Spotify. And I just found them here this year, but they had the guy on that started d3baseball.com back in like 95, 96. And, they were talking about, um, like some of like the historic rule changes. And so my mind was kind of circling a little bit around um, the intentional walk. And as a pitcher, do you prefer the intentional walk, or would you rather see the pitcher have to throw those 4 pitches? I guess that could maybe depend if you're the opposing team, right? Because there could be a wild pitch, right? There's been games won on
Yeah.
a wild pitch on an intentional walk. As a pitcher, like do you have a perspective on kind of that setup? And I don't know, what are your thoughts there?
I mean,
We're going off track a little bit here.
I definitely don't necessarily have a preference because I never did the intentional walk myself. So it definitely makes the game quicker when you just hold up the 4 fingers and tell them to go down. So, but it definitely takes a little bit of stress off knowing that if I did have to ever intentionally walk somebody, I wouldn't have to worry about eating a ball to the backstop. So,
Has the the I guess technically the pitch clock, right, is supposed to be in play, I believe, this year. Has that come up from any of the umps during the game to say like, speed it along, or have you noticed anything? I mean, I'm assuming in most Division 3 they're not necessarily taking it, but has that really come up much in some of the games?
So umpires are technically, it started last year, I believe. We umpires would just kind of keep it on a stopwatch, and
Mhm.
20 seconds doesn't seem like a long time, but in between pitches, it pretty much is. And uh, I'm the one Augustana pitcher to actually have a pitch clock violation. I got that down last year in Winter Haven, so definitely another thing I don't not necessarily the most proud of holding, but it's definitely kind of a funny little story. But it definitely, as guys have gotten used to it, I don't think it's necessarily one of those things where umpires are having to watch it too much now. So
Yeah, I couldn't recall if they were putting that into play. I can't remember if it was last year or this year. Um, there's been a number of different, like, obviously rule changes the last couple of years with that, but I couldn't remember then as well if they're supposed to actually move to like have something visual kind of in some areas, but kind of unique. Well, let's talk about Florida because you're going to be flying down there here Thursday morning. Getting ready to head down to Fort Myers for a 3-game set, and I saw some of the parents talking online about, you know, where potentially the team is maybe staying. I know they're trying to get some accommodations going there, but Gene Cusick Classic there, at Terry Park. And, this has been mentioned, this has actually been mentioned on the D3 Baseball, .com, podcast. This has been mentioned actually a few times over the last couple of years, but Augustina gets multiple trips down to Florida per year, and that's a pretty unique thing at Division 3. Usually teams maybe get one. Um, I mean, how has that experience been like getting the opportunity to go down a couple of times, knowing, not many Division 3 teams, get that type of experience. Um, what's your kind of, what's your thought been on that?
I feel like a lot of us, we're super grateful because we do recognize the fact that we do get to travel a lot more than I think the average Division 3 team. Getting to go to Memphis. We were in Rantoul this last weekend. We were supposed to go to Leavenworth, Kansas, and then the 2 Florida trips. We definitely do recognize how lucky we have it compared to other Division 3 teams. But getting to go down to Florida twice every year, it's always a lot of fun. We usually play some pretty good talent down there, and it's always a nice little shot for us to get into even warmer weather than the other places we had been. And it's a nice little weekend all focused about baseball. And like I said, the talent that we get to play down there and usually puts us in a pretty good spot coming into our next Florida trip. So we'll kind of build from there.
Now, how well have the parents been traveling? Because, outside looking in, I mean, obviously I don't get a chance to travel much. I mean, Coach Wallace, there's an extra seat to Florida. I'm sure I could probably make it work. But how much do, the parents really kind of travel to some of these? I mean, seeing the interaction, on Facebook. I know there's, a number that seem to travel pretty consistently, but um, what type of like support, do you see from, parents and family and friends when you are traveling quite a bit?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times, depending on the trip, a lot of parents do end up coming at least for a few games. And I know my parents usually try to make it out to at least one of the Florida trips. Don't know if it's because of me or the warm weather, but no, it's definitely, I feel like we travel pretty well. And it's always nice to have, I guess, our own little fans there cheering us on whenever we really need it or that sort of thing. So it's definitely a nice little aspect that our families are able to join us a lot of times on these trips.
Now, when you're playing, at Terry Park, whether it's the first time or, the last couple of times you've been down there, like, do you get any sense of nostalgia knowing that, like, when you step on that field, obviously it's been renovated and some of those things, but just knowing like the history of that field, I mean, Ruth, Cobb, Roberto Clemente, they played there and it's like 100+ years of like baseball history, in that area. I mean, what's the atmosphere like, kind of surrounding Terry Park when you're down there?
Yeah, I mean Terry Park. It's like you said, it's one of the more like historic baseball areas and parks, and probably in the entire nation. So it's definitely one of those things. You walk in, you see all the names that have played there, and definitely my first time there. You definitely see it's definitely an older park, but it's one of those things. You're kind of on the field, and I know for a fact some of those guys kind of get those vibes of like how nostalgic it is or how cool it is to be playing on the same field. So it's definitely a good time.
Um, Now, where do you guys typically stay? When you go down, like to Fort Myers.
I'm pretty sure we've stayed at a different hotel every year. So
Yeah.
well, it kind of just depends. I think it's whatever is nice and, gets us a good deal. So definitely can't complain. We haven't stayed anywhere bad. And like I said, we're always super grateful to get that opportunity to go down there.
Now, when you do some of that stuff, like, is the schedule pretty tight in terms of travel, or, do you ever get a chance, to kind of mix in, seeing anything, when you're in a particular area? I mean, what's the travel schedule like?
I feel like it kind of depends on each trip. So with Fort Myers, we're down there, I think like 72 hours. So it's one of those things. We'll get off the plane probably Thursday evening, and we usually practice right once we get to Fort Myers that night. It's baseball trip, business trip, right? We try to keep it that way. Hey, but usually kind of just depends on the day, depends on how long we're there for. I know last year a couple guys and I and we're able to go kind of do a couple things in Fort Myers since we did to get an off day there last year due to a rain cancellation. So I feel like it kind of just depends on the trip, but we try to also have fun and enjoy the fact that we get to spend March in Fort Myers and Florida and all that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe you can bring some of that nice weather back up here. Because well, next week, it'd be nice because once you get back, Tuesday, you guys travel to Iowa City playing Iowa Hawkeyes. Tuesday it's like a 4 o'clock game. Now I was watching the Loras Iowa game last night, and there's a few players I know you played with last summer, with the Madison Mallards, Tyler Guerin, Blake Guerin. Um, Tyler, I believe he was a pitcher for you guys. And I think what Blake was maybe first base, I believe.
Yeah.
Looking forward to playing them kind of next week. I know you don't want to necessarily look ahead, but just thinking about, former teammates you maybe hung out with the summer with.
Yeah. So there was actually a third pitcher there from Iowa that me and him started texting a lot more right after we kind of found out we were going to be playing each other. So we're definitely kind of talking about it. And it's one of those things we're looking forward to seeing each other just because our paths haven't crossed yet. Haven't talked to the Gearins yet, but it should be good to see them. I talked with Tyler a little bit since he was a pitcher. Me and him hung out a little bit throughout the summer. So it should be a nice little reunion of the four of us. So
Absolutely. I know my son wrestles in Waterloo, so I have Friday off. So we're going to be up wrestling at state this weekend. And I'm trying to figure out how I can adjust my work schedule Tuesday to go pick up my other son, Wyatt. My older son, he loves to come to everything Augie. So he really wants to go up and go to that game. So I'm like, if it's weather is mildly decent, where like I know he can at least kind of hang, through hang through the game.
yeah,
We're gonna do all we can to get up there because I think it'd be
yeah.
awesome, to see you guys play up there. And um, um, now kind of staying a little bit on the the Northwoods leagues. Now you spent, was it 2 summers up there or 3 summers?
I spent one summer up in the Northwoods.
Was it? For some reason I was thinking you were up there for two. Um, tell me, because Harry was up there with you for a little bit. Um, just tell me a little bit about the experience of like being up there, because for anyone that hasn't gone up there, when me and my boys came up and saw you, you know, it was awesome. I mean, tons of fans, lots of engagement. It was Matt Foley night. For those that are, the van down by the river. So that was a ton of fun. I think we left with a ton of Matt Foley swag. Um, what was it just kind of playing, in the Northwoods League for the summer, in that type of fan base? I know not everybody, has that big of a fan base, but man, everybody in Madison really seems to like, really kind of rally around that team. What was that just kind of general experience like?
Honestly, there's like so many different ways you can describe it. Getting to be out there the whole summer, absolute blast. Made some really good, hopefully lifelong friends. Still talk to a lot of the guys to this day, but getting up there, you're playing 76 games in just about 80 days. So it was a long summer, a lot of work, but getting to play in front of 7,000 fans every night was something truly special. And then, you're getting to the park 1 p.m., if not earlier, for a home game. And then, you're hanging out and you get fans tailgating starting at like 3:30, 4 o'clock for a 6:30 game. So they definitely rallied around us, and it was a ton of fun pitching in front of that crowd. Plus, all the other things that kind of came along with it. Super grateful. I was with an amazing host family, all that stuff. Just so many different things you could talk about. So
So, well, got my Madison hat right here, kind of hanging out in the background. Now, you said there was a host family, so I mean, talk through that a little bit.
yeah, so right once you kind of like signed on with them, that was one of the agreements is they'd help find you a host family. And I got an email about 2 weeks before I went up there just saying, hey, contact these people. These people will be hosting you in the summer. Reached out to them, and pretty much they shot me their address and showed up with a couple duffel bags full of clothes, and they showed me where I'd be sleeping for the entire summer. And they were amazing people, and I'm still in touch with them a little bit, and I'm super grateful for the experience they offered me. But yeah, so it's definitely a little interesting to start out, sleeping in honestly a stranger's basement or like spare bedroom for a little bit. Then you get to know them, and
Yep.
it's always kind of a fun little experience getting to know them too. So
Um, yeah, that's pretty cool. Now, did you get to keep like, any of the like specialty jerseys, anything like that? Did you get to kind of leave the season with any of that stuff, or?
unfortunately, they didn't give it to us. A lot of us bought kind of like our favorite one because they'd give us like a player discounted rate. But I think I bought one of them, so that's in my closet back at home. So
All right, which one did you go with?
I bought the motivational speakers one. So
All
the
right, yeah, the Matt Foley, I
yeah,
like it. It was funny because they had the motivational speaker like contest at the beginning. God, some of them were just terrible. Like they weren't even close. The one guy though that I remember, we were walking to like one of the bounce houses because my boys wanted to go to that and throw some, see how fast they could throw the ball. And I saw that the guy who won, he was all dressed up, had his, shirt, stuffed. Boy, he was just walking and he was playing the part literally from the time he was walking from the parking lot all the way in. So I was like, absolutely, much respect to that for sure. So,
yeah, no,
uh,
it was definitely kind of interesting to see.
yeah. Um, Now, well, let's talk. Let's switch a little gears, because obviously it's your fifth year. Not a lot, just from like a class schedule, work, type of thing for you. I know you were sharing with me at the basketball game, just working at the Arsenal kind of during the day, playing baseball at night. Just kind of the fifth year schedule feels, pretty nice. Like, talk a little bit about maybe that schedule, but what is it that you're doing, at the Arsenal?
Yeah, so with that fifth year schedule, it's kind of nice. Usually we wake up. A lot of us kind of have like part time jobs, so to speak. I know Alex Simon works over at the Arsenal with me, just in a different directorate. Other guys are working elsewhere here, but it's definitely a nice thing. You wake up, you make a little bit of cash, and then you go play baseball. So, and then at the Arsenal, wound up meeting somebody in town. He works at Joint Munitions Command for the United States Army, and he basically told me about a student employee spot, and one thing led to another, and I somehow gave him my resume and got a call a little bit back, and they offered me a spot at Joint Munitions Command. So I've been working there since about the beginning of January, kind of looking over contracts and that sort of thing for or just foreign munition sales. So it's a great time. Definitely enjoying it, learning a lot. So
Now, what's your degree in?
biology. So it has nothing to do with
Nothing
any
to
of the
do
work
with
I'm doing.
Well, that's fair. That's fair. Well, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, I've got a series of maybe 5 or 10 questions we'll run through. And then, these are kind of short answer stuff, kind of some fun stuff here. I know we're past 9 o'clock here. So this is probably one of the latest interviews. So again, I appreciate your time, but you're a working man now. You got to get up in the morning. So
and with the rain, we got 5:45 practice. So
yeah. All right. Well, let's start with this one. What's your favorite memory just kind of over, your past 5 seasons here at Augustana?
I think by far it's winning the CCIW in 2023 at home.
God, that was such a fun one. That was a fun one.
Especially just everything we went through that day, kind of running through the tournament, get there, get upset in that first game by Wesleyan, down to, I think, 3 outs left. Kid falls in left field. Wasn't even raining at that point. And then, everything that kind of ensued after that. So it's hard to beat that one.
Because that was the one Ozanic slid in from home into home, right? Is that right?
Ozanic hit the single and then Verb scored.
Ozanic hit. That's right. Okay. Yeah. I was trying to think about that one.
Ozanic did slide into home to tie it in the 9th, I believe, though. So
maybe that's what it was.
I believe
okay.
So. Yeah.
All right. Question number 2. Now that Joe Morgano has graduated, all right, who has moved into that hype man in the dugout? Like, who's bringing the character? Like, who's kind of standing above the rest? Bringing the energy.
Filling the shoes of Joe Morgano, definitely a hard thing to do. But I think Cam Miller, when he's not in the bullpen warming up and all that stuff, or pitching in games, he's usually a really fun guy to be around. Probably the loudest in the dugout, so he definitely brings a lot of energy, which is definitely nice to hear.
Absolutely. All right. So, growing up in, Colorado, Arvada, what's your favorite MLB team? Is it the Rockies, or are you kind of going outside of Colorado?
Sadly, it's the Rockies. Kind of turned into more of a fair weather fan the last few years, but definitely a lot of memories at Coors Field and watched a lot of Rockies games growing up.
All right, who's your favorite Rockies player then?
All time, I feel like it's super basic answer, but Todd Helton.
I was going to say Todd Helton. Yeah, I was like, okay, it could be Todd Helton, Matt Holliday, Troy Tulowitzki. Like, gosh, I remember I moved there in 2007 and was there till 2014, just shy of 8 years. And that first year in 2007, I moved there June 11th. And that's when they had that's when they went through Rocktober. Yeah, it was like 22 straight game winning streak or something like that. Super crazy. I went to 37 games that year. I remember I would just get off in the middle of after work, and I lived downtown. I lived off of 13th and Spear, kind of downtown there, and I would literally just like hop online, buy a rock pile ticket, walk downtown, and just hang out. So, it's such a cool stadium. Have you done an opening game out there before?
I've not. my family used to have like season tickets, but money got a little tighter as we were kind of growing up, and all of us were doing our different things. And growing up with three siblings, kind of one of those things. The ends weren't really meeting, and it was one of the things we could watch it on TV. So we still try to
Yeah.
go to a game or two whenever I'm home. So
Well, yeah, they've done such a good job of just keeping a cool experience, downtown there with the Rockies. And I was actually just out there here, guess in March, but haven't been to a game since we moved back here. So, all right, do you have what would be your favorite baseball movie?
I would say my favorite baseball movie, super basic, but The Sandlot. Kind of grew up on that
Okay.
movie, so yeah, it's definitely up there for me.
Now, who would be your favorite character within The Sandlot, do you think?
Probably Ham Porter.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I like it. All right. Okay, so you're from Arvada. Now, I lived off of 52nd and Wadsworth, like right behind Costco there.
Okay.
And Kickin' Wings was my jam. What's the best place kind of in that area? If someone's going to Arvada, where would you say to go eat?
I feel like it's a little ways away from Arvada, but Bojo's Pizza. But if you got to go to the one in Idaho Springs, it's a little bit of a drive, but you're in this mountain
Yeah.
town, and then Bojo's is, I know it's a chain, but it's pretty well known for, I think it's called like the Rocky Mountain Pie or something like that. Like they're huge, thick crust pizza type of thing. So I'd say definitely go to Idaho Springs and get one of those from Bojo's. So
All right. You know what? I know Bojo's, but I don't know if I ever went. I ever went there.
yeah.
So, all right, two more. So, if you could choose any actor to play you in a baseball movie, all right, they're playing Addison Southwick. Who's that actor? And we're gonna throw this on there: mustache or no mustache?
If we're going mustache, I'd say Miles Teller. Looks nothing like me. Just wears a really good mustache.
That's a solid pick. That's a solid pick.
I mean, his mustache looks a little better than the one I had. He grows it here. I don't, but yeah, I'd say probably him.
That's a solid pick. I literally was driving home from work today, and I was thinking about that question. I was like, who would, like, I'm talking a 45-minute drive from Muscatine to my home. Like, who would play you? And I settled on like old school, maybe Tom Selleck.
Okay, yeah, I can see Tom Selleck too with the mustache, the magnified mustache.
But I like Miles Teller. That's a little more recent.
I feel like
that's
him
a
and a
solid
mustache.
pick.
Yeah.
Miles Teller's like such a good actor.
Yeah,
he's such a good actor. Okay, last one. Because you are officially the longest podcast guest, by the way. We're coming into 49 minutes. So, okay. So, lastly, if you could go back in time and give your freshman self one piece of advice, what would that be?
There's definitely a lot of advice I'd give my younger self. Definitely now that, I feel kind of old being 23 on the baseball team, but I think if one thing I'd have to say is just keep your head up, keep working hard, right? There was a lot of times freshman year where I wasn't necessarily too happy with my performance or where I was at, but, definitely one of those things. I wish I could have heard it a few times my freshman, beginning of my sophomore year before I really got going. Be happy you get to play baseball. Just keep your head up, keep working hard, regardless of the situation.
I love it. Well, that's we'll end it right there. Well, certainly good luck, Addison, this weekend. Again, appreciate you coming on and doing this tonight.
Yeah, of course, thank you.
Absolutely, you're one of my favorite people. I've gotten to know you, pretty well the last couple of years. So again, appreciate having you come on. safe travels to you and the team down to Florida. String together a couple of wins. That'd be great. And hopefully I can get up to Iowa City next Tuesday and see you guys. But if not, I'm sure you guys will be on the Big Ten Plus network. So I'll be watching you somewhere. So anyway, travel safe. And again, thanks again for jumping on tonight.
Yeah, of course. Thank you again for having me.